If I had to do my tier list again right here, right now, I might bump Gief up like a spot or two or something like that, but like not much because really it's mostly the player here and not the character, but this does show what the character is capable of. So all the people who are complaining about Gief needing a bunch of buffs and other stuff on Twitter need to pretty much shut their mouth and get good.
In the post-win interview that Snake did, he even said, sometimes I feel like the weakness that everybody's talking about with Zangief is just a placebo. Maybe he's not weak. Maybe he's not as bad as people are saying. Now, the other side of that is maybe it's Snake Eyez being that much better than everyone else. But like I said earlier, it's part of it. But what's to say that you couldn't watch this footage and go, oh, I see what Snake Eyez did here.
All right, welcome back to another episode of EventHubs Talk and Block. I am John Catalyst Gray. With me as always is John Velociraptor Guerrero.
Hello. Hey, how's it going, everybody? So the big news over the weekend, we had our big Capcom Pro Tour online event for a premiere event for a spot in Capcom Cup this year. And there sure were a lot of JPs if you check our usage stats. A lot of, Kens, the usual suspects. But there was one character and one player that I don't know if everyone is suspected to be there, but that definitely showed up and took the whole thing. Of course, I'm talking about Daryl Snake Eyez Lewis, man, a Zangief player, and Zangief has now not only won a tournament, but has punched a ticket to Capcom Cup. Arguably the worst character in the game right now, if you ask Twitter. Hey, if you ask us even, we recently did a tier list. I think you can check that out around here. But completely unexpected, does not fit the narrative, if you will, of the tier list of the competitive Street Fighter 6 happenings as of late. It's all been Ken, it's all been JP, and it was against a JP player in Grand Finals, had to reset the bracket and then win the whole thing. Interesting, a big development here. So, John, I want to turn it over to you. What are your first reactions to Snake Eyez winning this event?
I mentioned Snake Eyez actually first thing in their tier list with Gief. Said that he is one of the people who can kind of buck this trend. Snake Eyez plays unlike pretty much most Giefs out there. You might be able to draw some comparisons to like, Itazan, but I think that Daryl has the best 720s in the business. He and I have actually played quite a bit, mostly in 5, but a few times here in 6. So I've gotten a pretty good feel for him and what he is like. And he, for most of Street Fighter V's lifespan, he was like one of the top players in LP. I haven't checked him out as much in 6, but I know he's usually at or near there. This guy is just a complete and total beast. I've been watching him ever since the HD Remix era, where he won EVO with Gief. And this guy's ability to play grapplers is almost supernatural in nature with some of the stuff that he does, because he has an uncanny ability to basically break you down and stay patient and stay relevant in a match that almost no one else can do. So that's where I first go to with this. Is I do think that he's a little bit of an exception to the rule that Gief is bad. Gief is still very clearly bad. He's got a lot of bad matchups. The JP matchup's really bad. It's a 3-7, and he's got a number of other very bad matchups. But Gief is one of those characters who can traditionally overcome those bad matchups through really sharp play by the other person, basically.
Yeah, I got to play countless matches against him at like Wednesday night fights, and yeah, his ability to see and perceive not only the game, not everything that's in front of him, but also his opponent, and in real time understand his opponent's mind, where they're going, and be one step ahead of them. So many times he just knew when the fireball was going to get thrown after nothing happening for 30 seconds. His ability to position himself and get whiff punishes, and that's a big part of what when we look at how he won this particular event, whiff punishes and playing footsies with a grappling character.
Yep.
It is on the next level. I'm hesitant to say that someone like Snake Eyez is the only one that could do this with Zangief. And I do want at some point in this discussion to get into, does this update at all where we feel like Zangief is as a character, where we feel like JP is as a character? Because, of course, if you ask almost anybody right now, the worst matchup in Street Fighter 6, JP versus Zangief is up there, if not the definitive one right now. Yeah. So that's
let's get into that now. That's such a great narrative to hit. So I personally, I did not have Zangief at the bottom because I had Jamie and Lily below him, because I've always felt that Gief is just a better character all around, especially, again, I played Snake Eyez quite a bit. He's someone I'm very familiar with, and watch a lot of his tournament footage, so it's if I had to do my tier list again right here, right now, I might bump Gief up like a spot or two or something like that, but like not much, because really it's mostly the player here and not the character, but this does show what the character is capable of. So all the people who are complaining about Gief needing a bunch of buffs and other stuff on Twitter need to pretty much shut their mouth and get good, because it's like you're not looking at the character and looking what he can do, and especially Snake's use of Super 2, which if we show our footage up here, you can see him hitting me with it quite a bit, because I don't respect his Super 2 because I'm an idiot. And when you do not respect his Super 2, which Reynald started to do, and there was actually a point in the footage here in the grand finals where Reynald had burnt out Zangief, and that is one of the worst scenarios in the game, to be against JP full screen and be burned out, but Snake Eyez just walked into the range and started buffering Super 2, and Reynald was completely afraid to throw a projectile, rightfully so, because the moment he did, that Super 2 was coming out with its deceptively long range and was going to grab him and destroy him. And a lot of Gief players love going for his level 3, that's just, it takes off 1 billion life, all that other kind of stuff. It's just it's one of the ultimate knock you out factors in this game, but they look to that so much they forget about how useful and how much utility Super 2 has, and that is really where Snake Eyez separated himself from the fold.
I agree, and I don't think that I think that it's also something of a situation where Snake Eyez has shown the way. I think other people could replicate this style of play. Now, you're not going to have Snake Eyes' reads, you're not going to have his reactions, all that sort of stuff, but you can play Zangief like Snake Eyes is playing Zangief, and I wonder, to the extent that, or to all the people that complain and just have an emotional reaction, whether it be to JP's abilities or to the lack thereof, or the perceived lack thereof for Zangief, that how much of this is you have not been looking under every rock, exploring every little nook and cranny of this game, because the developers have shown time and time again that they have thought about so many of these scenarios. And I want to look at Zangief specifically and say, first and foremost, yes, he has uphill battles for sure. I don't disagree that JP has an advantage here. I would still put it in a 6-4, and we'll get into that in a second. Hold on a second, everyone. I still don't believe in 7-3s in this game currently. I think that just about every scenario has been thought of, and let me give you this really quick. I do think Zangief could stand with a few buffs. Lariat hitting on both sides, I feel like that's how that move is supposed to function. No, you don't agree?
No, it starts to blow up cross-ups then at that point, and it's susceptible to meaties, and it works just fine. Snake Eyez, again, is proof of that move working just fine. It's just not as brain dead as it was like in 4, and in some extent 5. But yes. Fair.
I mean, all right, fine. If you don't want to give it to him. Snake Eyez actually was asked this question, and he said he would prefer that Lariat was more consistently comboable in combos, so like jab into Lariat, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Maybe give him that. And then also you see a lot of footage of his Super 1, which is an anti-air grab super, whiffing, where you just go, dude, I know what the function of this is supposed to be. It was supposed to hit in this scenario, and it just didn't. I think you could give him stuff like that, and it would be fine. But would that change the character? Would that change the JP matchup? No, not really. A few scenarios, quality of life scenarios, I don't think he needs much more than that. Now let me get into why. Zangief is the kind of character that can get into a position and still threaten you. And to everyone that would simply say, oh, he's just got no options, oh, it's an unwinnable, it's a 9-1, all of this stuff, get out of here with that energy. It's not helpful.
And I want to talk about this a little bit, because you and I are journalists, and our job is to be objective and to look at this stuff and to be as unbiased and as thoughtful as possible. Players' jobs is to win a tournament, and their job is to get buffs for their character and other things like that. And that's how come some of the players in the community, not all, I know there's some really good ones out there. I'll name drop Justin Wong. Justin Wong is amazing with all the stuff he does. And he tries to be unbiased and very thoughtful. A lot of players don't do this, and this is where EventHubs separates itself from the fold. We really try to be unbiased and thoughtful about this. We don't always agree very clearly, because John says there's no 3-7 matchups, especially with playing JP, which is like, what, kind of thing. I couldn't disagree more. But we all discuss this not for our own benefit, but for the community's benefit. We're trying to unpack this for the community and help the community level up. We're a second or third or whatever string part of the process here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but this character is able to, even in his worst and perhaps the game's absolute worst matchup, have a fighting chance and put himself into situations where he is still a threat, where the JP can't just mindlessly do stuff, and the result is an exciting and enticing potential fight. Now, yes, there was so much of just block, wait, patience, wait, and maybe you don't want to kind of play that kind of game. It's a special type of person, type of player that's going to be willing to play Zangief for a character like that. But the point is you can. And the point is there are answers like Super 2, even if he doesn't have a great drive rush, where other characters, by the way, would be able to use that. So, and in the post-win interview that Snake did, he even said, sometimes I feel like the weakness that everybody's talking about with Zangief is just a placebo. Maybe he's not weak. Maybe he's not as bad as people are saying. Now, the other side of that is maybe it's Snake Eyez being that much better than everyone else. But like I said earlier, it's part of it. But what's to say that you couldn't watch this footage and go, oh, I see what Snake Eyez did here. He positioned himself, and you know what he did against Zangief or against JP? He was just getting little hits for the most part in the neutral. Hit, jab there, smack, smack here. Occasionally he'd get a full jump in with a huge combo and take advantage of that situation. But Zangief forever has been this more of an Oki's vortexy type of character, and that's not the case here. Like maybe in the corner sometimes, but for the most part, you have to earn each and every hit. And Snake wasn't getting the most massive of hits. He was just chipping away at life bars and using that threat of, I could get you here, so you can't just throw fireballs freely here, which opens up the horizontal for me to pepper away at you and get you. And he won beautifully, brilliantly by employing that and in using that mind game, making the mind game instead of just saying it's impossible, and then using that mind game against Ronald. But I'm just saying all this to say, I don't think Zangief is as bad a character as people have put him out, and I don't think that don't go to unwinnable. That's what I'm saying. Don't go to unwinnable. Don't say it's impossible. There are absolutely routes through, and especially in modern games, even the worst characters in the game can get the job done more often than not. Developers have figured out balancing to a level that they haven't ever before. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying you want a grappler to be much better than mid-tier in the first place, but I think what you have right now, despite everything that people have been saying and such on social media, that you have a pretty balanced game where even the worst character against maybe the best character, and I don't think that, but a lot of people do, in the worst matchup, this kind of a thing can still happen.
Yeah. I want to ask you, would you move Gief up on your tier list that you did a week ago?
Sure. And let me say, I don't know exactly how far, and maybe not all that much, because in the same capacity, I think a lot of the other characters that are lower tier still have juice, can still get the job done. And if you, again, when you watch Zangief and you watch Snake Eyez in this, he's so patient and dealing with so much zoning and just block, parry, inch forward. The true reality is most players don't have that much patience, and most players wouldn't want to have that much patience. So maybe Zangief isn't the kind of character for you, but the point is you can navigate with this kind of character if you have that kind of patience. So maybe I'd buff him up a few, but I don't think he needs to. I think the bigger takeaway here is that the distance between number 1 and what is it now, number 19, isn't that vast. I don't think there is. And there might be a big divide between the absolute top tiers and then, maybe the other half of the cast or the other, 2/3 of the cast. But anyone can get the job done, as evidenced by yesterday's finals.
I think one of the big things that Gief players are running into is coming from 5, where, as you were talking about, he's an Okazemi master. He's probably the best Okazemi character in that game, and maybe one of the best Okazemi characters that's ever existed in a Street Fighter title. But Street Fighter 5, you might as well highlight, underline, and circle Okazemi like 50 different ways for every cast member, because that game just relied so heavily on that pressure. And so he does have that a little bit with this game and Drive Rush and a few other things. He can do it. It's nowhere near as effective as it was in 5. And so a lot of people are coming from 5 and going, oh, and here's the thing about Snake Eyez in 5 is he did play Gief throughout it, but he mostly played Kage at the end. Like, he was not even a big fan of Gief in that game, because Gief played very differently in 5. And welcome back to 6, where he's much more of a traditional grappler type, where I think Snake Eyes' Okazemi game is solid, but I don't think it's like fantastic. I've seen better, like Dr. Danny Pham, I think, played his Gief quite a bit back in 5. I think he has much better Okazemi than Snake Eyes does, but I think Snake Eyes has much better footsies and fundamentals than most Gief players.
Stupid, yes.
Yeah, and so that's something Gief excels at in this game, and that's traditionally what grapplers excel at. You need to highlight, underline, and circle patience when you play a grappler, usually. Not in 5, but in 6 and most other Street Fighter games. And that has to be a fundamental part of how you play, where then you see the blood in the water, then you see someone make a mistake, then you pounce. That's when you go for it. And Snake landed his fair share of SPDs and neutral and other stuff by doing a drive rush right into that perfect range, grabbing him with a light SPD and doing a number of things. And then I don't want to knock Reynald too much because he is just an unbelievably gifted fighting game player top to bottom, mostly known for King of Fighters, but a number of other games as well. He's just phenomenal. But being a JP main myself, I did see some stuff he was definitely leaving on the table. Did you see that as well? A few setups, a few things that were just, not quite on the level. So he was mostly getting by with JP's very high tierness. Well, this is a very, very, very strong character. I still got Kin number 1. I still think JP's a step down from him, a slight step down. But with the combination of Snake just being a better player in this game and having a bit more knowledge, a bit more experience, I think he just was able to capitalize on what Reynald was not able to take care of. So
let me ask you this really quick here. Now we know that the best JP player in the world is Kakeru, right? Mm-hmm. If Snake Eyez and Kakeru were to run first to 10 right now, and you have the pristine ability and play and execution of Kakeru, where do you how does that shake out?
Kakeru in that, yeah.
Oh yeah, I would too. But what do you think the final score is?
Where are they meeting at? Grand finals or winners finals?
First to 10. First to 10. Which gives Snake Eyez some time to adapt.
I'd probably have that pretty close to about 10-4, something around there. Maybe 10-3, somewhere around that vicinity. I think Kakeru would win.
I think Kakeru would win, but I'd give it closer to 10-6, something closer, maybe even 10-7. And I think a lot of those wins would be later on because, it's an uphill battle that you have to figure out as the Zangief player and figure out the puzzle. But I think 10 wins is a lot to get. And with Snake Eyes' mind there, we might see that kind of a thing in the not too distant future, as I would suspect Kakeru will be on his way to Capcom Cup soon enough. And maybe these two will meet in some other international events. Would be very interesting to see. But yes, still clearly in JP's favor, and this could have gone at one very specific point in Reynald's favor, but it didn't this time.
Away. You and I have both been there with JP, that super technical character, very, very, very technical, maybe the most technical character in the game, and the difference between winning and losing can literally be you slightly messed up your input and you got the wrong thing. I think that actually happened to Reynald a couple times in those sets where he had the game-winning play and he just dropped it, and it's very hard to consistently execute with this character. It's what made Kakeru's run through Gamers 8 so impressive, is that he was pretty much able to consistently hit everything. He was just in the zone. I want to see how Kakeru does here in another month, another few tournaments and stuff, because these games are very hard to have consistent performances in. The days of Daigo just dominating Street Fighter 4 and no one being able to touch him, I think, are long over, and I think we're going to see a lot of different players take their turn at the top of the mountain in this game. I don't think we're going to see the stability runs that we even saw in 5, where Tokido, Infiltration, a number of other players just had these really long win streaks for about 6 to 8 months or something like that. I think those days are over, and I think they're mainly over not because of the game, but because of the player skills out there, that so many people are grinding these games at high levels now. I think it's really hard to have that consistency.
I think that's true, but I do think that this game is more balanced than ever in terms of Street Fighter games, and that creates a setting where all of these different players can really flourish and really flower. And I mean, hey, here's the first big example of that, right? So
you think it's more balanced than 4, huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Absolutely.
Impressive.
I mean, that it's hard to even compare the two. 4 was from like 1,000 years ago, and we've learned so many lessons since then. Just standing on the lessons that you've learned from 4, you would have a naturally more balanced game. I think maybe even in 5, but that's another conversation I don't want to get too far into, because there was a lot of lessons that were learned there. But yeah, absolutely. I think Street Fighter 6 is easily the most balanced Street Fighter game we've seen, and it's not even close. All right, disagree with us in the comments, and we will see you guys in the next video.